everybody, welcome to part 3 of my video series for Raid and Trade. In this video I'm going to show you some sample gameplay showing a 5-player game. Now Raid and Trade is a thematic game. Now yes, it's a Euro game, but it does blend in a lot of thematic components. And it seems like most thematic games, they seem to make a lot more sense when you see the game played. So hopefully in this video, watching the gameplay, the video is going to make all those tutorial instructions from the prior video make a heck of a lot more sense and allow you to judge to see if this is one of those games that you want to add to your collection. Anyways, I have a 5-player game set up. I have all the boards laid out. All the boards have been seeded. All the locations are put out, and all of our players are ready. All of our players start with 15 action points. Remember, at the start of every single round, every player starts off with 15 action points all over again. We have our starting global event cards. We have all our locations, 3 starting quests, and we're just going to go straight down the line pretending that Zoe is the youngest player, because in the rules it says the youngest player starts the game, and all future turns, whoever has the least amount of resources is the first player in the start of every round. So let's go and start with Zoe. She's player number 1. The first thing she needs to do is decide exactly which global event is going to occur. So we have 2 global events. We have the Hidden Lab, and then we have the Tough Luck global event. Now, Tough Luck says that every single player is basically going to get beaten up by some thugs, and they're going to lose a whole bunch of their resources. Well, since nobody has any resources, it's probably not a good card to do. So I think we're going to look at the Hidden Lab that says each player can spend once 3 resources to gain 2 skill points. And that looks like a good one that it's going to help all of our players, especially early in the game. So this one is going to be discarded. Of course, it may come up later once we go through all these events. Now, there's only 10 event cards. So basically, that's enough event cards for 5 rounds. And the whole stack is going to be shuffled. And we're going to start all over, starting with the 6th round with all the cards back in play again. Meaning that some events can come up we didn't see before, or some events can be picked all over again on future rounds. So the game's set up, 5-player games. Let's go and start the turn with Zoe. So remember, on your turn, you can do one of 2 things. You can move and then you perform an action, or you can perform an action and then do your move. And there's 4 different actions that are available to every single player. Zoe happens to be the green player, so we're going to start with her. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start the turn with Zoe. And we're going to spend 1 action point, bring us from 15 down to 14, and we're going to use that for a movement. And we're going to use that movement to cross into another tile. Now, we didn't cross a barrier, so we don't have to spend any extra movement points. But every time we enter a tile that currently doesn't have any incident cards on it, we're going to flip over the top incident card, and we're going to see exactly what's going to be available. We're going to see the scavenger incident, which does require somebody to discard an orange resource to go ahead and gain that one. And since we don't have any resources yet, we're not going to do that quite yet. And instead, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and decide that we're going to raid this large building. So this is a level 10 building, which means it's going to cost 3 action points to go ahead and raid it. So we're going to go down from 14 all the way down to 4 action points with a very strong lead. But we're doing this because we're hoping that we're going to get a lot of good resources out of it. So we're going to flip over the top a large building card, and we're going to see that's going to be a blacklist card, which means that if we do decide to raid this building, we're going to take 2 points of faction hit, but we're going to gain 8 resources. And if we spend 5 of those resources, we can gain 2 skill points, which is very, very tempting. Especially since, remember, if you get to 20 skill points, you're going to win the game. Of course, it's always nice to start with some resources, so we need to make a decision. We can decide that we don't want to raid this building, and instead of raiding it, we can gain some fame points, or we can decide to raid it, lose some fame, and gain a whole bunch of resources. Well, that's a little bit too tempting for us, so we are definitely going to decide that we are going to raid this building. So the first thing we're going to go is we're going to go down from 0 all the way down to -2 on our faction board. Now remember, if your faction ever gets to 6 or -6 in the blacklist, you can't raid the green buildings anymore. If you get down to 8, you can't raid the yellow buildings no more. If you get all the way up to number 10 on the blacklist, you can't raid any buildings. All the large buildings are no longer accessible to you. So that's something you have to be very, very careful of, and that's why you have to watch your fame. Luckily, you can gain fame by going to the outpost or by various other things, but let's go ahead and figure out what kind of resources we're going to gain. Simply reach in the bag, and we're going to blind draw out 8 resources, and we're going to get a decent mix. We're going to get 2 guns, which we can use to fight other players. We're going to get some yellow, we're going to get some food, blue, 2 green, and 1 orange resource. So that's the complete turn for the Zoe player. We've gone through and we've done 1 movement. We've done 1 action. We're pretty much done with this player. Her turn is over. It's now time to move to the next player in order, which is going to be Jake, who needs to figure out exactly what they want to do for their turn. The Jake player on their turn, they're going to spend 1 action point. They're going to decide that they're going to move. They also want to leave the center area. They're going to spend an action point to move over to the next tile. That's going to bring them down to 14 action points. And then from here, they're going to decide that they're going to raid this medium trailer, which is going to cost them 8 action points. bringing them all the way down to 6 action points left over. They're going to flip over the tile, and we're going to see that we're going to get a building that isn't being protected by any city guards, so we're going to roll the die and see what's going to happen. If we get a star, we can draw 6 resources, and then we can use the bottom part of the card. If we don't get a star, we're only going to get 3 resources, and then we cannot use the bottom part of this card. Although this one just says spend 1 skill point. If you fail to actually ransack this one, then we can actually get 6 resources. Unfortunately, we don't have any skill points at the start of the game, so it's not something we can do anyway, so we got to hope for success. We're going to roll a star, which means we get to dig through and we need to gain 6 resources out of the bag. And we gain a total of 6 resources. We're done. We just had to forget that we drew our incident card, which we're going to check out right now, which is the dog companion. We don't have any purple resources to claim it. We did get 6 resources though. That's going to be pretty much it for the Jake player. Their turn is over. We're now going to move to the next player in line, which is going to be the Maya. So on the Mayu player's turn, she needs to figure out exactly what she wants to do and how she wants to explore the board and see if she wants to do what the other players are doing by completely leaving the center board, or if she wants to spend her time in the center area going after these smaller buildings which don't use up quite as many action points. She's actually going to decide that she's going to stay in the center area, and she's actually going to raid this building she happens to be standing right in front of right now, which is going to cost her 6 action points, bringing her down to 9. She's raiding a small building right here, so she's going to flip over the card, and we're going to get a decision if we want to raid this building and gain resources and lose favor with the Golden City or not. We're actually not thinking that this is really going to be that great a reward. Only 3 resources for 1 hit on our fame. Although we do have the bottom card that says spend 1 skill point to gain 3 resources of our choice out of the bag, which is very, very tempting. And we can only do that if we actually decide that we want to go ahead and raid this building. Well, Mayu is thinking that she so far is liking the thought of trying to gain a little bit of fame, some positive fame, because she's looking at this quest over here, which does require positive fame to complete. So she's going to decide that she is actually not going to raid this building. This card is going to be put back on the bottom of the stack, and she's actually going to gain 1 fame with the Golden City. Now, unfortunately, her action points are spent, which is unfortunate, and she didn't gain any resources, but she's slowly working her way towards gaining some fame, which can give her some quests and do some other things which can be very positive for her. And that's going to end the Mayu player's turn. It's now time for Carter to take his turn. Carter, for his turn, decides that he's going to stay in the central area also, and he's going to raid this building that he happens to be right in front of right now. So that's going to take him down from 15 action points all the way down to 9 action points. And then he's going to go ahead and raid this building right here. We're going to flip over one of the small building cards, and we're going to get another card that's going to cost us to make a decision. Of course, this one's going to be a little bit harder because we're going to gain 4 resources instead of 3 like the prior person had to make that decision. So if we take a 1 hit on our fame, we're going to gain 4 resources out of the bag. And then we could, if we wanted to, spend 3 of those resources to gain 1 skill point. And that's really, really tempting to do right now, because skill points are very, very nice. They're usable to get these quests completed, and they're also good for also winning the game. So we're going to decide that we are going to go ahead and perform this raid. And since we raided this building, we're going to gain that, which we can spend to gain some of these quests. We're going to go ahead and take the 1 hit on the fame. And then we're going to draw 4 resources out of the bag. And then out of those 4 resources, we're going to put one of those resources back, or all but one of those resources back in the bag to go ahead and gain 1 skill point. So since Carter's kind of a jerk and he likes to shoot people a lot, we're going to go ahead and keep the gun icon. We're going to discard the other 3 resources into the bag. That's going to put Carter all the way at 1 skill point. He gets to keep 1 resource at least. He's done with that. Now, he hasn't done his movement yet, and he is deciding that after this, he's going to go ahead and spend 1 more action point, and he's going to go ahead and move all the way over to this area right here. He's done with his action. He's done with his 1 movement. His turn is over. It's now time to move over to Garcia's turn. He needs to decide what he wants to do for his turn. Before I forget, though, Carter needs to draw an incident card since he did enter a tile that does not currently have an incident card on it. So now over to Garcia's turn. Garcia is not going to move, or at least not spend any movement points. He's going to raid this house right here, which is a small house. That's going to be 6 action points for him. That brings him down to 9. We're simply going to flip over the top card and figure out exactly what we're going to get. And we're going to get a card that we have the chance to roll some dice to get some resources. We're not going to roll a star, so instead of getting all these nice things like the bottom part of the card and the extra resources, unfortunately we're only going to get to draw 3 resources out of the bag. So let's see which resources we're going to gain. We're going to gain medicine, a tool, and then we're also going to gain some clothing. Those will be the three resources we gained. And now since we haven't done a movement yet, we're actually going to go ahead and decide that we're going to move. We're going to spend 1 action point to move over here. That's going to move us down from 9 all the way down to 8. We're going to draw an incident card, and we're going to see what we're going to get. And this incident card is require a purple and a yellow resource. We only have the yellow, so we can't claim that card. So let's lay that card on the table. That's all the turns for all of our players. We're still in the same round, but now we got to start all over with Zoe's actions, who currently has 4 action points to decide what she wants to do. On Zoe's turn, she's going to spend 1 action point to move back into the center tile. That brings her down to 3. She gets to draw an incident card because she entered a tile that doesn't currently have an incident card, and there's going to be the corpse incident card. It requires a yellow to interact with, which she can actually spend, so she's going to spend the yellow to go ahead and discard the yellow back into the bag, and she's going to take that incident card. What that incident card says is that you can use this card while you do a search in a building to gain 2 extra random resources. So she's going to take that card, and then she's going to make 1 more movement. She's going to move all the way back onto this tile again, which is going to be 1 more action point, bringing her down to 2 action points. And now for her action, what she's going to do, and again, I know some of you are thinking that I could spend the orange to gain this, but remember, she does need orange, and we're actually going to spend the orange for one other thing really quick right here. We're actually going to initiate a trade with the Garcia player. And we're going to ask Garcia if they are willing to trade one of these resources that they have in exchange for one of their resources. We're going to ask Garcia if they want to take this orange in exchange for this white resource they have right here, and they need to decide if they want to do that. So let's just say in this example that they decide to make the trade. So they successfully make the trade, and that's going to be the action for Zoe for this turn because she did a trade with another player. But since she actually traded with Garcia, and Garcia's special power is anybody who trades with him doesn't have to use action points, she still has 2 action points left over, but she's done a move and she's done an action, so her turn is over. It's now back to the Jake player's turn. For Jake's turn, he's going to go ahead and decide that he's going to do a raid since he's in an area where there's a small building, which requires 6 action points. That is, all we have left is 6 action points, so we're going to burn all 6 of our action points, leaving us with 0, which is kind of risky because Carter right here can freely attack me now because Carter does happen to have a gun. And if I don't have any action points to defend myself, I'm kind of in trouble. I'm kind of banking on the fact that I'm a little bit of a distance away from him. I'm hoping he's not going to come after me. So we're going to spend all of our 6 action points, and we're going to go ahead and raid the small building. And we're going to draw one of the small raid cards, and we're going to see that's one we get to roll the die for. We're going to roll the die. We're going to get a star, which is going to allow us to draw 4 resources from the bag. We're going to gain orange. We're going to gain a food. We're going to gain a red. And then finally, we're going to gain another tool. So we'll add all 3 of these resources to our pile of resources we have right now. We're actually starting to stockpile a lot of tools. And we do have food, which we can use if we want to go ahead and pick up the dog if we want to spend that food. Or we can save it for later, because remember, food can be cashed in to gain action points. And it says right here, as a bonus, since we did roll a star, we can craft 1 level 1 item that requires 1 skill point, which would be these 2 items right here. We can craft one of those items for free without having to spend any resources if we want. So what we're going to do is we're going to decide that we're going to craft the engine right here, which says we can use this card as 2 of any resource of our choice when we do a build action. So that's actually a really good one. We're going to do that for free thanks to finding this card, which is really nice. And we're now going to move up to 1 skill points because we have successfully built an item. We're going to discard this card. We don't have any action points left to spend on movement, but we do have 1 food. We're going to discard that 1 food, and we're going to go ahead and find ourselves a very nice, friendly dog, and we're going to be very thankful for this canine who's going to join our adventures in this post-apocalyptic world. Maya's going to go ahead and spend 1 action point, and she's actually going to move and leave the center tile and go up to this tile right here. Now, the reason why she's doing that is because she's not too afraid right now of Jake, even though he does have access to a weapon, because he's out of action points, so I don't have to worry about him attacking us, because it does take 5 action points to attack another player. So I spend 1 action point to go ahead and move up, and then I'm going to spend 8 action points, and I'm going to go ahead and raid one of these medium buildings, which is the last of my action points, putting me at 0 action points. I'm going to raid a medium building, flip over a card, and again, I get to have another tough choice if I want to gain some faction with the city, or if I want to gain some resources. And these decisions are starting to get a lot tougher right now. Because, yes, I may lose 1 faction with the city, putting me back at 0, which isn't too big of a deal, but we're looking at 7 resources right here. if we get caught raiding a building by the city. So do I want to gain 1 more point of favor with the golden city? Remember, if you get 10 favor and 20 action points, you do win the game. But I don't have any resources if I decide to do that. But if I do decide to do that, I'm going to gain 7 resources. I can spend 3 of those to gain 5 action points, which might allow me to do things, especially if I happen to get a gun out of there. I might be able to attack Jake, steal some of his items, maybe steal some of his resources, and those are decisions I need to make really, really quick. So it's still very, very early in the game. It's still the first round of the game, and getting fame is never really a bad thing in this game because remember, once I get enough fame, I can claim this quest right here, which does require fame, which has a very nice reward for it. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this Golden City employees who are watching me, the city guards, and I'm going to decide that I'm such a wonderful person that I'm not going to raid this poor person's home, and I'm going to gain some more fame with the Golden City. That's all the actions for Mayu. She didn't gain any resources this turn, but she did manage to gain some favor. Her turn is over. It's now back to Carter. Before we take Carter's turn, I almost forgot again. We have to draw an incident card because there are no incident cards in the square, which means we do draw one as soon as a new player does enter that square. So got to make sure I do that. So now that we're done completely with Mayu's turn, we're now going to move over to Carter, who is way down here on this tile right here. Only resource we have is a gun, which means we could technically, if we wanted to, we could claim this card right here, which is a bravery card, which allows us to discard 1 weapon to save another human being. If we give up 1 skill, we're going to gain 2 fame, 2 fortune with the city. Now remember, we don't have any skill points yet, but actually I almost forgot. We actually do have 1 skill point because we got the 1 skill point from that 1 building that we didn't completely ransack, where we discarded some of our resources, all but 1, to gain that 1 skill point. So if I give up my 1 and only skill point, I can gain 2 favor with the Golden City as long as I'm willing to give up my weapon. Now, Carter really doesn't need weapons too badly because he has the ability to manufacture them with some of his skills he can make. So I think we're actually going to go ahead and do that. We're going to spend the 1 gun resource, put the gun resource back in the bag, which allows us to take up this incident card. Then we're going to take this incident card and we're going to spend it, discarding it, and that's going to use up 1 skill, bring us back down to 0, but that's also going to bring us from -1 all the way up to +1 with the Golden City fame. So the nice thing about incident cards is they don't use up our actions and they don't use up our movements, so we still actually have 8 action points. So we can decide that we can move or we can go ahead and do some raiding. Well, we're going to raid this medium building, which is going to cost us 8 action points. We're going to raid that building. That's going to bring us all the way down to 0 action points, and we're going to go ahead and draw one of the medium building cards, and we're going to have to roll the dice. If we gain a 7, we're going to gain some resources, and we're even going to get some fame. Possibly if we fail this roll, but then we only get 5 resources. So we roll the die, we're going to get a star. So we're going to gain 7 resources. We're not going to gain the fame, but 7 resources is still pretty darn good. So we're going to draw out 7 resources out of the bag. We're going to gain a gun, some food, and some various other resources which we can use to start building all of our gadgets. And since we successfully raided this building right here, it's going to be removed from the board, and that's the end of Carter's turn. We now get to move all the way over to Garcia, who gets to take their turn. Garcia on his turn is simply going to spend 6 of his action points, which leaves him down all the way down to 2 action points. And he's going to go ahead and raid this small building right here. We'll flip over the card, and we'll see what we're going to get, and we're going to get a decision. We can get 2 blacklist points, which is going to really hurt our fame. I think we're currently at 0 on our fame chart, so not too bad, but that's going to give us 3 resources. And then if we want, we can spend 5 resources to gain 2 skill points. So we need to make a decision here. If we take 2 hits on the fame, we can gain 3 resources and then spend 5 of them to gain 2 skill points, which will give us 2 skill points. So now we have a really tough decision. Do we want to go into negatives on the fame for very, very little resources, but a definite positive gain of 2 skill points? And remember, if you get to 20 skill points, you can potentially win the game. So we have a tough choice here. 2 points on the skill on the faction loss, and I think we're actually going to do it. We're going to take 2 hits on the fame. We're going to go from 0 fame all the way down to -2 fame. So we're now on the blacklist. Not too terrible because we can do some various things if we want to make up for it, so we're not too worried yet. We're going to grab 3 resources out of the bag. It doesn't matter what 3 resources we really grab because we're going to discard these 3 resources plus 2 more resources, and considering which kind of resources we use the most of, we're probably going to keep the tool because we use those the most. And then we're going to discard 5 resources back into the bag, and we're going to gain 2 skill points for doing so. So that's going to put us all the way from 0 all the way up to 2 skill points for Garcia. Garcia has 2 action points left over. He hasn't done a move yet, so he's going to go ahead and spend his 2 or one of his remaining action points. He's going to move right here. And then he's going to spend 1 more action point for a total of 2 action points, spending the last of his action points, moving into the last area. And since we entered a new tile, which currently doesn't have an incident card, we're going to flip over the top incident card, and we're going to see it's a scavenger incident card. We put it down here on the board so everybody knows that's part of that section of the board. And that's the end of the Garcia's player's turn. We're now back to Zoe, who she can either take some moves or she can pass and figure out exactly what she wants to do. So on Zoe's turn, she's going to use one of her action points and she's going to use it to move. She's going to move on the other side of this barrier right here so she can access that building on the start of the next turn. Then she's going to spend 1 last action point and she's going to go ahead and craft an item. She's going to craft a transceiver, which is going to allow her to gain 1 skill point, putting her up at 1 skill point. She's going to discard 1 white and 1 green resource, which is going to go back in the bag. And now she's built a transceiver, which is allow her to trade in some resources. If she ever comes to the point where she's not having the right resources, she needs to get the items and create the items that she's trying to get to go for a skill victory, if that's what she wants to do. That's the end of the Zoe player's turn. She's out of action points, and it looks like all of our players are out of the action points. That's the end of the first round of the game. It's now time to start the second round. So the first thing we need to do for the next round is we need to figure out exactly which player is going to be a starting player in the next round. And the way that's going to work is whoever has the least amount of resources is going to be the starting player for the next round. And that's going to be Mayu, who currently has 0 resources because she's been trying to be a paragon of society and not going raiding and breaking into people's homes and stealing all the resources. So she gets to be the start player at the start of the next round. So all of our players need to reset their action dials all the way up to 15. Because remember, at the start of every single round, every single player starts with 15 action points. And then after every single player starts with 15 action points, the starting player, player number 1, gets to decide which global event card is going to go into effect for this entire turn. So what she needs to do, or he or she needs to do, is the prior card is going to be discarded, which actually wasn't used by any of our players. And then 2 new cards are going to be flipped over. And then the player who is currently the starting player, which is Mayu, needs to look at these 2 cards and figure out exactly which one of these cards she wants to be the global card. The first one is the deal, which is going to allow more than 1 player to be in the outpost, which is something she really doesn't care about right now. And the other one is going to be the last exit, which says that every person who does a break-in is going to get +2 resources this turn. Well, since she doesn't have any resources, and it would be very nice to start gaining some resources in this round, she's going to go ahead and claim that as the action card. She's going to make that the global event card for this turn, and now it's time for her to start her turn. And again, everybody starts with 15 action points at the start of every single round. So starting with Mayu, the first thing she's going to do is she's going to go ahead and do some raiding. Now she doesn't want to spend any movement points to go across this barricade, especially with this building so available to her right here. So she's simply going to move in front of this building right here. Again, if we don't cross a barricade or a tile, we don't spend any movement points. Then she's going to spend 10 of her action points, bringing her all the way down to 5, because she has 15 minus 10 is 5. And she's going to raid this large building. We'll flip over the top card. And finally, she gets the chance to roll the dice, so she doesn't have to worry about taking any faction hits. We're going to roll. We're not going to get a star, so we're only going to get 4 resources. Not really the best building for her to raid. Not too great for her, but at least it's a start. So she's going to get 4 resources out of the bag. And since she didn't get the star result, she doesn't get the bonus at the bottom of the card, which would allow her to craft 1 item for free, which would have been very, very nice for her to do. So unfortunately, she's not having the best luck in the world right now, but at least she's managed to do some raiding. And she's managed to get some resources, so at least she's at the start doing something pretty darn good for herself. So that's all she's going to do for her turn. She could move, but she doesn't want to. She only has 5 action points left over. She's going to stay right where she is, and her turn's going to be over, and now we get to move to the Carter player. For Carter's turn, he's simply going to spend 1 action point, and he's going to go ahead and craft an item. He's going to go ahead and craft his super gun, which costs 1 gun and 1 orange resource. So we're going to simply discard those 2 resources, put them back in the bag, and now he's built a super gun, which is going to give him 1 skill point, putting him all the way at 1 skill point at this point. Now, he hasn't moved, but he doesn't really want to. He's happy where he's at right now. So his turn is over. Now we get to move to the Garcia player and figure out what they want to do for their turn. His turn is going to be pretty darn easy. We're just simply going to do some raiding. We're going to look at everything that's available. We have access to quite a few yellow buildings. So we'll move in front of this one right here, which isn't going to use up any of our action points. We're simply going to spend 8 action points. That leaves us with 7 action points. And we're raiding this building right here. We draw a yellow card, and we're going to see that we need to make a die roll. We're not going to make the roll, unfortunately. Dice is not being very friendly with me today. We're going to get 3 resources. One is going to be a food resource, which is really good in case we need to get extra action points. We have successfully raided this building. It's going to be removed from the board. We've done a raid action. We don't want to do any movements, so that's pretty much the end of the Garcia player's turn. It's now time for Zoe to take her turn. Zoe, for her turn, is simply going to spend 6 action points, and she's going to go ahead and raid that small building in front of her. That leaves her with 9. We'll flip over the card, and we are going to see that we get a chance to roll the dice. And we're going to roll a star, which means we get to gain 4 resources out of the bag. Now, we also have the option here, if we want, since we did get the star result, if we want, we can go ahead and spend 3 of our fame to gain 2 skill points, if we really want to, but unfortunately, we're already at -2 on the blacklist. That put us at -5. 1 more point away from being unable to raid any of the small buildings, so that's not really a good decision that we're going to like. So we're not going to do that. We're going to get our nice little resources. We're going to ignore that last part of the card. We're not going to get any blacklist points. This building has been successfully raided, and then we're just going to spend 1 movement point, bringing us down to 8 action points to go across this barricade right here. And then we are pretty much done with the Zoe player's turn. It's now over to the Jake player's turn. On Jake's turn, he's going to decide that he doesn't like Mayu inching in on his territory when he's trying to get all these resources and raid all these buildings. And since he's not very happy about her being that close to his territory, he's going to spend 5 action points. He's going to discard one of his weapons, his 2x4, and he's going to try to clobber Mayu across her head to take some resources for her. Now, Mayu could defend herself since she has 5 action points left over, but unfortunately she does not have a weapon to protect herself and defend herself, so basically she has to take the dice result and suffer with the consequences. She can't roll the die to defend herself, so basically Jake is going to roll the die, and we're going to look at the results of whatever he rolls. Jake is going to roll a fireball, which is his special ability, which allows him to discard 1 rival item or incident card from an opponent when they successfully win a battle. And since he successfully won the battle, he doesn't have to worry about it since she can't defend. Unfortunately, it's not really what we wanted. We were hoping to steal some resources, so we're going to go ahead and discard our trusty canine, which is going to allow us to re-roll the die 1 time. And we're going to re-roll the die, and guess we're going to get the same result all over again. It's really early in the game, so it really doesn't matter, but we get to destroy one of their item cards. So we're going to destroy one of their item cards and remove it from the game. And that's basically going to be the end of the combat for the Jake player. They still have some movement points if they want left over. They have 10 action points. They can do a move if they want. They're pretty much happy in this little corner of the world right here. They're not going to move. Their turn's over. So it's now time for the Mayu player, who is not liking the fact that Jake has turned so violent. So she's going to try to figure out a way to get away from this and hopefully help herself out a little bit better. So for Mayu, we're going to spend 1 action point to cross the barrier, which is going to put us down to 4 action points. We're going to spend another action point to move over into the next tile over, which is going to put us down to 3. And then we're going to draw an incident card, which is going to be the runaway card. And if we have a white and a blue, and we do, we're going to go ahead and claim that card. These 2 are going to go back in the bag, and we're going to gain this card. Kind of happy right now because so far the luck has not really been on our side so far. That's the end of the turn for the Mayu player. It's now time to move back to Carter. Carter, for his turn, is deciding that he's going to be a little bit violent and try to be a little bit more aggressive with his play. So he's going to spend 1 action point to move up into the center tile. We're going to flip over an incident card, and we're going to see that it's also another runaway card. Not a card we want to buy just yet. Then we're going to spend 1 more action point, and we're going to go ahead and start taking some pot shots at Jake, who decided to start the hostilities early in the game. So we need to have 1 attack. We're going to use our item card right here. It says, don't use gray items to attack. Re-roll it once the combat die if we don't like the result. So we can use this, discard this card to use this for our attack, and that's going to cost us 5 action points. That's going to bring us down to 7 action points. And then we're going to go ahead and shoot Jake. Now Jake, unfortunately, doesn't have any weapons to defend himself. And he also hasn't managed to create any of his items allow him to run away from combat. So that's why Carter's going to use him as a good target and start attacking him, getting a little bit of revenge. So we get to roll the purple die 1 time, and Jake doesn't get to roll any dice because he doesn't have any way to defend himself. So we're going to roll the die, and we're going to look at the result we got. And we're going to end up hurting Jake hard enough, just enough to steal some resources from him not technically taken from him, but we're going to get some resources because we got that one result in our die, which is allow us to build any one item that we want. So we're going to discard this card. We don't want to use this reroll power, and we're going to decide that we're going to go ahead and build our nice hyper gun, which is going to give us 3 skill points, which is going to move us all the way up to 4 skill points. And then we can discard this anytime we want to use it as an automatic success in a combat. That's the end of the combat for this player. That's the end of Carter's turn. We did a move, we did an action. That's the end of their turn. It's now back to Garcia. Garcia for his turn is going to go ahead and discard 1 food, which is going to give him 1 action point, which is going to move up to 8. Then we're going to go ahead and spend all 8 of those action points because we're going to go ahead and raid a building. We're going to go ahead and raid this medium building right here. We're going to flip over one of the yellow cards and see exactly what we're going to get. We're going to get the roll of the dice. We're going to roll and we're going to get the star, which means we allowed to get 6 resources. And since last exit is in play, that's going to give us an extra 2 resources. And I do realize I forgot that earlier turns, but again, I'm just trying to do a quick playthrough to give you an idea of exactly how the game actually plays. So we're going to get 6 resources for the card, plus an extra 2 resources from the last exit card. And these are all the resources we're going to get from raiding this building. This building is now removed from the board. That's 1 more building out of the game that can't be raided by any of the players. We've got a lot of weapons to protect himself from the homicidal Carter, who seems to be walking around the board. Him and Jake seem to be happy to attack all the players. That's going to be it for Garcia's turn. He is out of action points. His turn is pretty much over. If he wanted to, he could spend the orange resource to go ahead and get that incident card, but if he did, he's not going to have the orange resources. He needs to start building his inventions, so that's why we're not doing that. We're going to end the turn on Garcia, and now we're going to move back all the way over to Zoe's turn. Zoe on her turn is going to spend the last of her 8 action points, and she is going to go ahead and raid that medium-sized building that she's standing right outside of right here. We're going to flip over a card and see exactly what we're going to get from raiding this building, and we're going to see that we have to make a die roll. We're going to fail at our die roll, which is really unfortunate because if we succeeded, we would have been able to craft 1 item for free. We're going to draw 4 items plus 2 more from the last exit for a total of 6. That's going to give us 6 total items. We're going to add those items to our pool of items that we have, our resources. And we're starting to get very, very close to starting to build some of our items, so we definitely want to start considering that on later turns. Unfortunately, we're out of action points. That's going to be it for her. We're going to discard the card. She doesn't have any action points left over. We could burn some food for some action points, but we really don't want to. Title's going to be removed. That's the end of her turn. We're going to move back to Jake, who currently has 10 action points. He doesn't have the ability to attack Carter back, unfortunately, because he doesn't have any weapons. So we're simply going to decide that we're going to raid this yellow building, which is going to leave us with 2 action points left over, because it does take 8 action points to raid this yellow building. We're going to flip over the yellow card. We're going to see that we have a choice. We can go ahead and take 2 hit Honor Fame. We'll go ahead and do that. That's going to put us down at 2 on the blacklist. We're going to grab 8 items out of the bag. We successfully raided this building right here. We're going to remove it from the board. We're going to get 2, 4, 6, 7, 1 more item, and that's a total of 8 resources we get from raiding that building. I hope you enjoyed this very quick sample gameplay for Raid and Trade. Now, unfortunately, when I'm just playing this game by myself to show the gameplay, I can't show you one of the best, most awesome things about this game, and that's all the theme and all the thematic mechanics that go in this game. There's tons of thematic artwork added to all these cards. There's text on all of them that adds to the theme of the game and really draws you into the theme of this post-apocalyptic future. And unfortunately, that's not stuff I can really show you, so I just am really just showing you the basic gameplay and showing how all these mechanics go to work together to create this very solid game of Raid and Trade. I hope you enjoyed the sample gameplay video. If you have any comments or questions, as always, leave them in the YouTube comments down below. You can also email me if you have any questions at offtheshelfboardgamereviews. That's otsbgr@gmail.com. As always, thanks for subscribing and thanks for watching.